Hey guys, it's me, Seren, back with another car video. I feel like we haven't done a car video in a while, but maybe we have. I don't. Oh no, yeah, I think the last one was Tip Your Waitress, which was a few weeks ago. So the Met Gala just passed. I normally don't do videos on the Met Gala, but which you guys know, I normally don't do videos on the Met Gala. I normally do Instagram posts on the Met Gala, but which I did do some Instagram posts on the Met Gala. If you follow me on Instagram, this person's right next to me. If you follow me on Instagram, you've seen in my stories that I did some post. Like, bro, we're right here. I almost just seen an accident because this person that was just right next to me tried to like go around the person in front of me too. Like, it's one lane. Anyways, so I normally don't do videos on the Met Gala. I normally just do Instagram posts. However, after the post that I did in Instagram stories this year, a video was requested. And I thought, okay, you know, I actually really enjoyed this year's theme. And I have some thoughts about this year's theme and the lack of execution. So I was like, well, I'll do a car video. Because I had somewhere to go today, so I was like, oh, I'll do one. So the Met Gala was disappointing as per usual. Every single year, it seems like the Met Gala gets worse and worse and worse because nobody understands the theme. Like, people never follow the theme. Like, maybe fucking only 5 to 10% of the people that attend the Met Gala actually seem like they follow the theme or understand the theme or execute the theme. Most people feel like they just treat the Met Gala as a costume party or just like a regular gala, a regular event, and they just wear like a boring ass evening gown or a ball gown, a suit, a tux. When like really the Met Gala is supposed to be almost like fashion awards almost. Like, it's supposed to be like the biggest night of the year in fashion. So this year's theme was In America, aka Americana. And it just seems like nobody grasped the theme, which I had a feeling that people weren't going to be able to grasp this theme because I know a lot of people are going to feel like this theme is really abstract. And I saw all these people being like, what? I don't get the theme. Like, In America, Americana, like, what is that? Like, I don't understand the theme. Like, what is that supposed to mean? So I did a definition in Instagram stories, and I also posted a definition in Discord as well, that In America, aka Americana, is classic American fashion. So let me give you guys a little fashion history. I would say that post the 1800s, you know, post-Revolutionary War, which was in the late 1700s. So I would say post 1800s was when we really started getting into a more distinct style of American fashion. And American fashion is extremely vast. It's extremely influential. And I would say that especially starting in the 1800s with the westward expansion, a lot of historians feel like the expansion out into the West is sort of what made America America, because you had, you know, all different types of people that were sort of expanding out into this like new frontier. Of course, you had indigenous people that were already there, but you had all these different types of people that were like expanding out into this like new frontier and creating this sort of like new culture, quote unquote, melting pot culture, quote unquote. And then especially post Civil War as well, you had all of the Black Americans, the newly freed Black Americans that also participated a lot in the westward expansion. And then the creation of American popular culture, which extends to fashion, right? So that's your fashion history. So I would say that American fashion really starts in the 1800s, but with the cowboy hats, the chaps, denim, turquoise jewelry, which is the indigenous influence, right? Turquoise, silver, gold, the gold rush. That's when you start really getting into some distinct American classic styles and looks. And then once we get into the 20th century, the 1900s, is when we start, I'd say especially in the 1920s, when we start getting into the very infamous, the flapper styles, very quintessential American, the cloche hats, you know, just very the drop waist dresses, very quintessential American styles, things that were made really, really infamous by the writers of that time period, things like The Great Gatsby, Ernest Hemingway, the Fitzgeralds, you know, and even the Harlem Renaissance as well, which was occurring, you know, the Black American Harlem Renaissance, which was occurring as well at that time period, and the really influential Black thinkers and scholars that were around at that time period as well. Really shaping this idea of American culture, American pop culture, American popular culture, and American fashion. And then you start, again, you're moving through time, and now you're getting into the 1930s and 40s, you're getting into the golden era of Hollywood, you're getting into the, you're getting into some of these like very classic silhouettes, some of the sweetheart necklines, you're getting into the button-ups with the big belt and the big skirt and the scarf around the neck, the very sort of, the classic sort of shirt dress silhouettes of the 1940s and 50s. You know, we're getting into, like, this is classic Americana and American fashion. And as we move through time, you start getting into the 1960s and the 1970s, which is my era, the discotheque, which technically the discotheque is a phrase that came from Europe, but like you start getting into the disco era, you start getting into the Halston, quintessential American designer, you start getting into the Bob Mackie, you start getting into the very much the sequins, the feathers, the furs, the colors, all, you know, this is American fashion, okay? And again, as we started, and then you can even start getting into the 80s, right? And I'm not saying every single trend, every single look, every single fashion. I'm just like naming certain things that were kind of quote unquote poppin', especially like in the 60s and 70s. You also had like the flare, the bell bottoms, the hippie style that we all know, the iconic looks that were made really, really famous by Diana Ross, that were made really famous by Donna Summers, that were made really famous by the Supremes, the Jackson 5. We're getting into the 80s, the Isley Brothers, you know, this is quintessential American fashion, especially the influence of the Black American, especially the Black American music, the influence of that on the popular culture and the fashion. Even though there's so many different layers to Americana and American pop culture, that you also have tons of different things that were going on at the same time as well, which is why, like, it really annoys me when people be like 90s fashion and like quote unquote like this is 90s fashion, because like people don't understand that like even just in the 90s there was like so much fashion, and like a lot of it depended on like who you were and where you were. And if you were like a Black American girl, right, especially like in the early 90s and the mid 90s, you were looking at Monica, you were looking at Brandy, you were looking at brown suede, brown lipstick, braids. But if you were white, you were probably looking at the grunge. And not to say that there were no Black people that were looking at the grunge or into grunge either, because the punk scene, the rock scene, the grunge scene was absolutely founded by Black Americans as well. But like a lot of people consider that to be like also part of the look of the 90s, the Kurt Cobain, the Nirvana, the plaids, the flannels, the florals, the combat boots, the beanies, you know, like that is quintessential American fashion. So an example of American fashion that I put on Instagram or Discord, I said classic American designers, Halston, Bob Mackie, classic American sportswear and silhouettes, Michael Kors, Donna Karan, Tommy Hilfiger, Calvin Klein, okay, Tom Ford, Jenna Lyons at J. Crew, even in the early 2000s. Streetwear, right? Streetwear, which was born out of Black American style, especially quote unquote urban and hip hop style. Sean John, FUBU, Rockaware, Baby Fat, Carl Kanai, Cross Colors, which I wrote a piece on for the Crisis Magazine, NAACP. Shout out to the NAACP for giving me that amazing opportunity. Thank you so much. They had a retrospective of Cross Colors in a museum that I wrote a piece on. This is American fashion, okay? You know, and just so many different looks. Cowboys, ingenue, pinups, hippies, grease monkey, the grease monkeys of the 50s, like the grease look, the Converse, the denim, like there's probably nothing more quintessentially American than denim, jean jackets. You know, I know people were gonna just go with like red, white, and blue, and the flag, and the stars and stripes, you know, looking like July 4th motherfucking vomited and like exploded and blew up all over them. But like in America, Americana, American fashion, I would say starting from the late 1800s up until present day, streetwear that is American fashion. Like, now is the time to like go into them 2003 archives and pull out the '03 baby fat extravagant fucking looks. Like, now is the time to go into the archives and pull out that 70s Halston. Now is the time to go into the archives and pull out that 90s Tom Ford. Now is the time to go into the archives and pull out again the Bob Mackie, and pull out the Karl Kani, the Dapper Dan, the basically Gucci Couture the sneakers and the puffy jackets. Again, like, streetwear is Americana. That is American fashion. That's, you know, it's in America. And I saw like a tweet that said the same thing, that was just like, you know, y'all can't even pick up a history book, like, and fucking get into the various fashions of the United States, because like American fashion is vast and it's also extremely influential. And there was so many eras and time periods and classic designers and classic Black American designers, classic Black American supermodels, the Beverly Peels, the Pat Clevelands, you know, that could have been chosen from as well. Very, again, for me, it probably would have been the 1920s or the 60s, 70s, maybe 80s, 90s, you know, velour tracksuits. Now is the time. You know, a lot of people I felt like I saw like dressed up, and then they just so happened to like have a cowboy hat, like, woo, cowboy. But like, again, I felt like very few people really recognize the full potential of this theme, right? Christina Ricci's character in Sleepy Hollow's in New York. The movie set in New York. Sherlock Holmes, Irene Adler, set in New York. You know, like, this is American fashion. And again, as per usual, people didn't really understand the assignment. But I also felt like this theme in particular sort of flummoxed people and flabbergasted them, because people to this day think of Americans as having no culture. And especially through extension, they think of Black Americans as having no culture as well. And so it's this like weird question of just like, well, you know, because like they say that like America's #1 export is the popular culture, which is the Black American culture, the fashion, the style, the music, everything. And so it's kind of funny to see people being like so flummoxed, because they think like, well, what is Americana? What is American fashion? What is American style? Even though we all know Pinup Girl, we all know the Bronze Bombshell, Joyce Bryant, or if you don't know her, you need to go look her up. You know, we should all know the Black American Chuck Berry. Like, we should all know the suits of Chuck Berry. We should all know Big Mama Thornton and the way that she used to dress. We should all know the way that they looked in Why Do Fools Fall in Love. That is Americana. In America, that is American fashion and American culture. And again, it just seems like there's this like, motherfuckers don't have taste and they don't know their fashion history, and they don't know their American history, and they don't know their Black American history, their culture, their fashion. And there's also a huge issue with, like, there were so many European designers. Like, there was so much Balenciaga, there was so much fucking like Versace, Bottega. Like, I know that's and I just feel like a lot of that still also stems from this like Eurocentric idea of like European brands as being high fashion, as being cultured, which again, like, why were there so many European designers giving their take on American fashion? Like, it made no sense. Like I was like, why aren't y'all wearing American designers? Why aren't y'all, you know, y'all love to fucking emulate a moment. That's all y'all know how to do, is how to emulate and take inspiration. Like, why did no one have on like the classic red Calvin Klein that Jennifer Lawrence wore at the Oscars in 2011 that like put her ass on the map? Like, classic American fashion, and it was fucking red too. Like, you know, and it, you know, why? Like, there was just such a lack of creativity, a lack of history, and a relying on some of these like same old standard old racist, classist ideas and ideologies about like European designers and sort of like Eurocentric styles and brands as more fashionable, as, you know, more posh, as more cultured, when literally the whole purpose was Americana. Like, everybody should have had on American designers, number one. And like, I'm gonna bring up Rihanna for a second because I hated what she wore, to be honest with you. I felt like her and Rocky were trying to do some type of a spin on like an oversized streetwear grunge look, which I feel like could have been done a lot better. And I seen this tweet where somebody was trying to like explain the influences, and all the influences that they were naming on Rihanna's outfit were all European influences. The theme was in America, Americana. Just because something is European doesn't mean it's high fashion. Just because something is European doesn't mean it's automatically high class, or that it meets the theme, or that it looks good. Like, and it didn't even meet the theme, and I was so disappointed because I normally feel like Rihanna like hits it out of the park, but I feel like the streetwear could have been taken like way further in terms of like the streetwear couture. Like, just the ball was dropped. The ball is dropped every year at the Met Gala because, again, people are tacky. They have no taste. They don't know their fashion history, and they never understand the theme or how to implement it. And everybody's also scared of like being unique and looking different, which is like a huge problem that I feel like I've been talking about a lot. Nobody wants to like stand out. But this was also just like a clear, like, the ball being dropped with regards to American culture and a lot of it by extension Black American culture, fashion, music, and influence. And the fact that in the United States we've had quite a bit of time now of very influential, very recognizable, you know, pop culture and fashion sort of throughout the years and throughout the decades and even throughout the centuries that people could have drawn on for inspiration. And instead they were just like, I don't know, Louis Vuitton, which is French. Like, you know, so I just wanted to do this video because, again, it seemed like a lot of people didn't even grasp the theme, but I felt like this theme was especially relevant for Black Americans because, like, we've made up so much of the American popular culture and we've influenced so much of the American popular culture in the fashion. And I love Americana. I love, you know, folk art. I love pop art. And I do feel like Americana is Black American culture, which I've talked about before. Some of you guys might have heard me talk about this, but I do feel like Americana is sort of traditionally looked at as like very kitschy. But even if you wanted to go kitschy, like, now would have been the time for that, you know? Like, now. I'm surprised Katy Perry didn't show up dressed as like a fucking hot dog or something in a baseball, because like now is the time for that shit, bitch. Like, only a few people that I really, really liked, that I thought that they understood the theme, but even most of them I felt played it really safe. Like, I liked Keke Palmer, but I did kind of feel like she played it a little bit safe. Like, there wasn't enough daring looks that wowed me, and I felt like this year's theme was actually one of the best themes that they had in a long time, and something that really could have been reached into for, you know, again, a sense of Americana, and especially with like the Black Americans that attended, you know, sort of like taking cues from our own culture. But motherfuckers don't know their own culture, and they don't know their history, and they don't know their fashion history, and they don't know shit about pop culture either. So they just show up looking a goddamn mess. And then they just think that because they got some European shit on, oh, that is designer, oh, that is some motherfucking look. Like, y'all think that European shit and these like Eurocentric standards are like better than American standards, which is like also rooted in racism and classism. You know, because like Black Americans run shit in the United States. Like, everything is influenced by us. So I just feel like that's like a big, the anti-Black American sentiment is a big part of the reason why like Americana is also like not recognized. So again, like, I'm gonna edit this and include some visual cues and examples of what I'm talking about. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Just a little, you know, off the cuff. I don't know what's gonna go up first, this video or my video on the VMAs. We'll see. Got a lot to say about the VMAs because I wasn't impressed with some of y'all faves. So we'll see. Food for thought as always. See you guys next time. Peace.